Good morning, everyone. We would like to begin today's event with a land acknowledgement. A land acknowledgement is a first step towards honoring the original occupants of the land beneath our feet. We are all guests on this land and are privileged to be here. Our acknowledgement is a call to action to take personal and collective responsibility for this land, its ancestors, and the current and future generations who call it home. We would like to acknowledge that Hillfield Strathallan College is situated on Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe territory as recognized and documented by the Upper Canada Treaty Agreements adjacent to the Haldimand Treaty Territory and is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island today. As someone who has always loved the outdoors, I've developed a deep respect for nature. Whether it be running on the HSC cross-country team, hiking in Dundas Valley with my friends, swimming in the lake with my siblings, or playing soccer on the field with my teammates, I've always enjoyed being active outdoors. It is only recently that I've really made myself aware of what a gift it is to be able to enjoy this nature on the land that is not mine. I'm a guest on this land, and I recognize the importance of giving respect to those who came before us and who it rightfully belongs to. So today, I express gratitude and acknowledgement towards each Indigenous community, and I encourage all of you to do the same. Thank you all for joining us today. This is an incredibly exciting opportunity for us all. There are a few notes I would like to go over before we begin the session today. Please be aware that the webinar is being recorded and will be made available to you after the presentation. If you would like to submit questions for Mr. Mandela during the Q&A session, you are more than welcome to do so. Please click the Q&A button to type in your questions. We also encourage everyone to promote and continue this conversation on social media using the hashtag Mandela for Hope. At this point, I am thrilled to invite a few of our youth leaders at HSC and Empowerment Squared to say a few words about our partnership.
Thank you, Nora. Welcome, everyone. My name is Oinlulua Adere Bigbe, and I am extremely pleased to see you all here this morning for this event, which will conclude our Black History Month celebrations at HSC and in the community. As the president and founder of HSC's Black Students Association, I am thrilled to see how the Black community at HSC has banded together, waxed in strength, and developed into the group that we are today. I am extremely proud of you all. Now, a little bit of background on HSC's BSA. In the lockdown of spring 2020, the BSA was founded during the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement and the publicized instances of racial injustice globally to combat occurrences like these at our school. As students, we had led Black History Month initiatives before and witnessed our community grow through them, but we felt it was a necessity to make an organization. At a school like HSC, we acknowledge that many times students of color are subject to racism and ignorance from their peers. And groups like the BSA, HSC's first student-led cultural affinity group, work to mitigate this and tackle mindsets that negatively affect these students. At the BSA, one of the first projects that we launched was a 17-minute video on the Black Lives Matter movement, which we worked on with students across the senior school on the importance of self-education and how students can get involved, along with the concept of seeking to understand, as one of my good friends and role models on this webinar, Mr. Leo Johnson, frequently speaks about, and a concept that I believe we should all consider in our lives. Since then, we have hosted cultural event celebrations, supported curriculum adjustments, and provided frequent presentations for students K-12 at HSC. This year, when we received the notice that Mr. Ndaba Mandela could come and present at our school through our collaboration with Empowerment Squared, we were thrilled. We are honored to support Empowerment Squared and the creation of the Liberian Learning Center and the Hope Development Program, which stands for Harnessing Opportunities to Promote Entrepreneurship in Liberia, a country with a diverse history, including of free enslaved people who returned to Africa. This program is important to us at the BSA as we wholeheartedly support the provision of equal opportunity for these youth, many of which are like students in this very webinar, students with potential to make a difference in the world. We encourage you to donate to the Liberian Learning Center and the Hope Project using the link www.hsc.on.ca/HSC for Hope to directly support the citizens of Painesville, Liberia, and beyond. As the daughter of two Nigerian immigrants who spent time living and gaining education in South Africa just a few years after Nelson Mandela became president, this event holds a special place in my heart. My parents have spoken fondly of Mandela and his work in South Africa, and have shared many stories with me about what it meant to be living in the nation at the time, which I am looking forward to hearing about more today. Like I hope it will for me, I hope that this webinar gives you all a chance to expand your worldview and understanding of your surroundings. As a closing remark, I would like to remind everyone about our theme this year for Black History Month at HSC, More Than a Movement. Although we will be touching on the importance of the Black Lives Matter movement today, I want you all to consider how the Black experience stretches beyond this. From this webinar, I want you to ponder upon the meaning of seeking to understand. Students, I want you to take away how to make sustainable change in your community. How can you use your talents to benefit those around you? Adults, parents, and teachers, I want you to think about how you can be instrumental in delivering change and supporting these students. How can you use your position to amplify student voices? And to all viewers, I encourage you to personalize this experience. I want you to consider what lessons you can take away today and how you can use them in your life, not only in spheres of leadership, but in your daily endeavors. I look forward to seeing how you all change the world in the future. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Masood. I'm 16 years old and I'm from Pakistan. I migrated to Canada six months ago and stayed in Malaysia for 3 years before coming to Canada. Leaving your homeland is never easy due to you have your childhood memories, your friends, and your relatives, but you have to due to some reasons. I wasn't allowed to practice my religion in Pakistan nor in Malaysia. However, Canada let us do that, and I'm very grateful for that. As I started to go to school in Canada, I didn't understand anything because the school system was new to me. I made a friend who introduced me to Empowerment Square. I enrolled myself in Empowerment Square. I seriously didn't regret my decision later. The mentors are so helpful, very kind. We always have great sessions and fun games. Empowerment Square is also helping the community with their great message of love. Now I'll share a program with you guys, which proves that in which Empowerment Square took part with Hillfield Strathallan College and proved us that they are doing an excellent job. This program is called Hope, which will transform 75 Liberians' life who are full of talent, but they can't help themselves due to how things stand in their life. I've always prayed that may Empowerment Square reach all the poor nations in the world who need support in their lives to make their lives better. Last but not least, I'll say that Empowerment Square is doing a flawless job. Thank you, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kelvin Obrio Ferenza, and I'm a grade 11 immigrant from Ghana in West Africa. I moved from Ghana in September of 2019 to come and continue my education and live with my aunt and grandma here in Canada. It has not been easy for me or my family to separate during the global pandemic, but like my mom always says, it gets better. It has been quite challenging leaving behind everything I grew up with and know, being introduced to this new system of teaching and learning, and also getting to adapt to this new environment. Because of that, my aunt introduced me to Empowerment Squared with the purpose of helping out people like me more with the academic work. My assignments, which were hard to understand and do, were further explained by this program. Not only do they help with academic work, but also help to develop the necessary leadership and life skills that benefit me as an individual and the community as a whole. It is an organization and a family which I think everyone should be a part of. I think the Hillfield strength of the Black Students Association joining the Empowerment Squared effort to support youth locally and in Liberia is important because it helps them to succeed through mentorship, access to post-secondary education, professional skills development and entrepreneurship, and sports and recreation. These are some of the many struggles I've seen experience back in Ghana, which I think when attended to can be solved. Thank you for your time.
It is now with great pleasure that I introduce our artistic performers. Our first performer is Eddie Larte. Eddie is a Hamiltonian wordsmith that is dedicated and equally in love with poetic performance and community building. Eddie graduated from McMaster in 2015 from Political Science and Labor Studies, and from Sheridan in 2017 with a diploma in HR Management. He is a founding member of Hamilton Young Poets and has presented literary work and facilitated workshops across Canada and beyond. His poetry is a blend of heartfelt storytelling and literary wordplay. More importantly, a man with a big heart, an even bigger smile, who is not afraid to let God use him. He will be performing the poem's Numbers and Gardens. A big thank you to Eddie for joining us here today. Our second performer is Peo Buitumilo. Peo is a grade 11 student here at Hillfield Strathallan College and one of the vice presidents of our Black Students Association. She is currently based in Toronto and describes herself as someone who longs to create art. She continues to work hard to use her talents to spread awareness and support for Black issues and cultures. Peo will be performing Stand Up by Cynthia Erivo. If you have an unstable internet connection, then the video of Peo's song might become laggy at times, but the audio should work fine. We will be sending her video to everyone after the webinar as well. Please join me in welcoming these two amazing performers.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eddie. I am a poet with the Hamilton Youth Poets. I am so happy to be here with you. And in the theme of lessons I've learned from my grandfather, I want to talk about lessons I've learned from my family as well. Part of Black history is really just going back into our roots and our ancestors and those that came before us, relying upon them for culture, for different aspects of tradition and growth that are instrumental to who we are as a people. So I want to talk about two people who were super instrumental to me. One being my father, the other being my mother. From my mother, I learned love. I learned grace. I learned faith. From my father, I had a bit more strength, a bit more analytical perspectives, but he still taught me love. So let me tell you about my father. My father's a statistician. He sees numbers and can tell you a story, like how my monthly balances are proof that I'm a poet, or my free throw percentage, evidence that I am a soccer player. My father reads percentages like witches read tea leaves, knows statistics like capitalism, knows exploitation, breathes probability the same way photos excel nostalgia. My father thinks in numbers. He knows the odds of randomly freezing to death are 1 in 3 million, but his immigrant mind will tell him, Chale, this winter will kill you all. He plays alchemist with his calculator, dividing his paycheck into bills, meals, and gifts. But when my parents separated, I wonder if his equation came with regression. Is there a love of best fit? I was barely in grade school, trying my best to connect the dots, learning timetables, thinking about the number of times my table was missing one of them. You were 2.5 times more likely to get into a fight when you have half a family. Stat lines like that read like an open wound, and numbers are known to separate people. 24% of Black children grow up in single-parent households. So what happens when he's not there 24/7? I become a percentage sign, a line dividing two different circles of people. That's why, despite the divorce rates and the variables, he reunited and remains married to my mother, ensuring there is no substitution for his affection. And this is how I learned of love. And I wonder if there is a greater love than that of a statistician, to know the odds and love in spite of them, to feel at home with charts and numbers, but dare to go into uncharted territories, to turn success from an unlikely probability to a probability, to turn a son from 18% chance of post-secondary to graduating with 84% average, 11.2 unemployment into middle class. What type of magic math is this? You know that 13% of people have spent a night in jail, but you remind me that most men make their own prisons. You know that 53% of people rely on the stars to tell their future, but you told me my future was to become one. And I wonder, who taught you how to love like this, to defy the odds over and over and over and over again until it becomes standard deviation? I guess when your whole life revolves around statistics, you work hard as hell not to be one. Thank you. And of course, being in an African household, like, I can't just talk about my father and not talk about my mother, because, you know, Ghanaian people, we like to talk. If I do a poem about my father and I don't do a poem about my mother, my auntie will call me and say, eh. So it's only your father who raised you now. So I want to talk about my mom. She also has a very, very special place in who I am as a person. So it turns out I'm bad at gardening. The only petals I know go on bikes. The only plants I know are factories, which makes sense. I grew up idolizing the man of steel and was ruled by iron fist. Give a man a shovel, and all he knows how to do is dig a grave. My mother tells me it takes a different type of faith to garden. It requires a certain humbleness. It requires you to be on your knees, literally get down to earth. She tells me it takes a different type of love to garden. You must be willing to get messy, dig deep, and pour enough of yourself until something emerges that is beautiful. She tells me there's a reason why they say get in touch with your roots. There's a reason why they call it a family tree. There's a reason why they say life itself started in a garden. And I'm known to be a bad gardener. I neglect my buds. I leave at the first sign of commitment. What do I know of growth? My mother stops me and says, take a look around you. Look at all these people who happen to be planted here. Don't you know that they too sow seeds? Don't you know that everyone is just as much petal as they are thorn? So the next time you see me here, performing, holding the door open for someone, smiling, or just simply breathing, know I am trying my best to garden. Thank you so much. I'm excited for you all to go back to your own roots, to your own ancestors, and learn lessons from them as well as we celebrate Black history. Thank you so much for having me.
I've been walking with my face turned to the side. Weight on my shoulder, a bullet in my gut. Oh, I got eyes in the back of my head, just in case I have to run. I do what I can when I can, while I can for my people. While the clouds roll back and the stars fill the night, that's when I'm gonna stand up. Take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home. Far across the river, you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer. I'm gonna keep on keeping on. I can feel it in my early in the morning, before the sun begins to shine. Ooh, we're gonna start moving towards that separating line. I'm waiting through muddy water. You know I got a made up mind. And I don't mind if I lose any blood on the way to salvation. And I fight with the strength that I got until I die. So I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home. Far across the river, you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer. I'm gonna keep on keeping on. And I know what's around the bend might be hard to face 'cause I'm alone. And I just might fail, but I knows I tried. Just to spit up the
Thank you so much, Eddie and Pale, for your inspiring performances. Those are some very tough acts to follow, but I think we might have someone ready to share the spotlight. My name is Strathallan Wabadu, and I'm incredibly honored to introduce Ndaba Mandela to our audience today. Born into apartheid, which is a word that means separateness, Mr. Mandela lived through South Africa's worst years of racism in the segregated township of Soweto near Johannesburg. When he moved to his grandfather's home as a young boy, his world was divided between whites and blacks, rich and poor, us and them. There was no oneness to humanity, just differences based on skin color. He resented rugby and cricket, sports that white children and families cherish as national pastimes, like hockey is to Canada. Because of this, it was difficult for him to watch his grandfather, now president, celebrate the 1995 Rugby World Cup victory with the Springboks and listen to the national anthem of his oppressors. The world saw this as a unifying moment for South Africa. To Ndaba, he saw his grandfather, who was taken away from his family for 27 years, overcome his anger and embrace the other side of apartheid. This shifted Ndaba's own inzondo, or hatred, for white South Africans to a place of compassion. He began to understand why his grandfather described freedom as indivisible and how the oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed. Ndaba still prefers soccer over rugby, but he doesn't hate it like he once did. The intergenerational trauma of apartheid continues to affect South Africa, and while we no longer call it apartheid, our world and countries are still racially divided. Here at HSC, in Hamilton, in Canada, and around the world, we want to change that. Nelson Mandela is a hero to us all, which makes his grandson, Ndaba, the perfect person to remind us of his story and continue his long walk to freedom. Through his new book and ongoing work with the Africa Rising Foundation, Mandela Institute for Humanity, and Pan-African Youth Council, Ndaba is here to celebrate Black History Month and show us a way forward, together, to right the wrongs in our lives. Joining us virtually, all the way from Johannesburg, I'm delighted to welcome Ndaba Mandela to our school and city. And I know we're all giving him a warm reception through our computer screens. Wamkele Kile, Mr. Mandela, and thank you for visiting us today. Mr. Mandela, okay, yeah, you got it, thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this great honor. The world has now moved onto a new world where injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. Last year, 2020, we saw global citizens marching in solidarity with our people in America, chanting the names of George Floyd, Trayvon Martin, and Breonna Taylor. Enough is enough, ladies and gentlemen. More than 18 countries from around the world stood in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. How much more bigotry and prejudice shall we tolerate? Gone are the days where we shall be turning the other cheek or turning a blind eye. It is up to every single one of us to stand up and make a difference and make their voices heard so that we can be in a position to be able to choose leaders that truly represent us. If we don't participate, ladies and gentlemen, and make sure that we are in the process to choosing our leaders in the electoral process, then we as citizens have no right to complain. So therefore, it is up to every single one of us responsibility to make sure that we do our part as active citizens, responsible citizens who are very much care and are concerned about the well-being of their citizens, not because you look like them, not because you come from the same culture, but because you recognize the common humanity that we all share. Now, when we look at Africa, where I come from, many people across the world see it as a place that is at the bottom of the food chain, right? When they talk about Africa, they talk about a place of war, poverty, disease, and dictators. And the only positive thing being safari, right? But ladies and gentlemen, they didn't tell you that you will find the most exquisite islands on the east coast of Africa like Mauritius, or on the west coast of Africa like the Seychelles, the most amazing places that you can go on holiday. When you look at all the retailers right now currently in the world, whether it's H&M, whether it's Hugo Boss, whether it's Louis Vuitton, they are all taking inspiration of designing their apparel from Africa, right? Now it's the Lesotho blanket, now it's a Swaziland blanket, appropriating our culture. So what do we say? We say no. It is time for Africans to tell their own stories. We say that it is time for us to make sure that we support those who are the true crafters and creators of this modern day youth pop culture that we're experiencing every day. Ladies and gentlemen, the only way we can truly overcome the oppression and suppression of our people is through active citizenry, is by making sure that when you want to go and assist people, that you do it through a consultative process. Don't go there with preconceived notions of what this looks like, but rather engage and remember that God has given us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. As a leader, you ought to listen more than you speak. And so when I look around the world today, I am very shocked to say that we do not have many exemplary leaders. Yes, we now have a new leader in America, President Joe Biden, and we salute him for his for his victory. However, to my American people, this does not mean victory has been achieved. We still need to continue pushing to make sure that the reforms in the criminal justice system are taking place and that laws are passed to protect our citizens from cops, from brutal system that does not recognize each of our humanity. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when you wake up and you take a cab and you go to school or you go on for lunch or you go for a meeting, that cab driver is probably from Bangladesh. When you are being served at the restaurant, that person serving you is probably from Ethiopia. And when you go home at night, you take another cab and you come across an African cab driver, right? So how are we as people now gonna say, now that our country has been built, can you please leave us alone? We don't want you here in our country. Bigotry, ladies and gentlemen, is our enemy. Now, we have been fighting this for 400 years. How much longer shall we continue to fight this prejudice? I want to create a world where my kids have something else to fight, not us fighting the same old thing. HIV/AIDS is another fight that I've dedicated myself through because it has created a whole generation of child-headed households across the continent of Africa. Now you ask yourself, when a 15-year-old has to look after their 9-year-old sibling and their 5-year-old sibling, what kind of job are they gonna get? Surely it's not gonna be anything legal. So in other words, these are the things that perpetuate the social ills of our society. So we need to make sure that we're driving and fighting this disease down to a zero so that we have no more new infections, nobody dying from HIV/AIDS related sicknesses, and 0 new infections. I'll tell you a scary statistic about America. In America, the average gay Black man has 1 in 4 chance of contracting HIV/AIDS in their lifetime. Now you see, this is not just an American problem, an African problem, ladies and gentlemen, but HIV/AIDS still exists in some of the most developed nations in our world. And so we cannot stop our awareness and driving education around HIV/AIDS. Now, one of the things that we have been very fortunate is that we have recently established the Mandela Institute for Humanity in New York. This was on the event after receiving much success and great feedback just after releasing my book. And so we decided that it is time that people understand the true value of the leadership values and the moral stand of Nelson Mandela. If we say that he is truly one of the greatest leaders in the world, then how come we have not dissected him and understood his values? Because what is going to take us to a new plateau, ladies and gentlemen, is value-based leadership. When you talk about morality, when you talk about integrity, when you talk about fairness, when you talk about love, when you talk about respect and discipline, you talk about Nelson Mandela. So we have created the Mandela Leadership Program, which we hopefully will be starting this fall. I think it's called fall in America in September, right? Where we'll be selecting about 15 to 20 young people from around the world to come and attend our course. The first few weeks are done online, and then it ends in an in-person tour of South Africa, where young people get to walk in the footsteps of Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was part of the royal kingdom and coming from the fourth house, which is the junior house. Now, as a junior house, our role is to mediate amongst the families, because the first house and the second house are always fighting over the crown, as well as to be counselors to the king. So my grandfather grew up watching the king preside over matters that his not only subjects, but his people would bring to him. Because you must understand, in these remote areas, the government rely on the chiefs and the kings to basically govern over those areas. So he moved from there and he moved to Johannesburg, where he was exposed to the prejudice and the brutal system of apartheid. And so he became a lawyer and activist, and that's where he established the first Black law firm in South Africa with him and O.R. Tambo. What are the lessons that were learned there? And when he got incarcerated in Cape Town and they moved him to Robben Island, what are the lessons that he learned there that made him finally forgive his enemies so that they can end the cycle of poverty? Ladies and gentlemen, I am not one to wallow and talk, but I will say that it is time our young people step up into public official positions in government. And those, remember, ladies and gentlemen, it's not just about being president. It's about also being a counselor in your community, from the point of the mayor's office to the governor. There are many different levels, but it is important that we as young people start taking up these positions and not complaining and listen to music and feel that that's going to be the way out. Social media is not going to help us deal with these matters. We need to take active, participatory citizenship and make sure our voices are heard, and we stand up and we get involved in the electoral process. We, as African people, have been fighting for far too long. And a lot of the time, you find that there's always a foreigner involved, whether it's a Frenchie from France, whether it's an American, right? Whether it's any other European country, really, or even the Chinese, who have been meddling in our politics and influencing the way we develop, because they come with such influence as far as their monetary fund is concerned. Now, I want to say to the young people, when you come to Africa, don't come to Africa looking for a job. Come to Africa where you want to start a business, right? Where you want to engage with your people. Understand that you have an advantage of having an education in a very amazing institution. So you have the advantage, right, to be able to create something sustainable. Look at the government as your partner, but most importantly, you need to have the entrepreneurial skill, and that means determination. That means persistence, right? Ladies and gentlemen, when my grandfather broke the chains of apartheid, he was able to defeat an enemy that he could see, because he would say that the president is my enemy, the court is my enemy, the police are my enemy. But now we have broken those physical chains. There are mental chains that still exist. Bob Marley talked about emancipate yourself from mental slavery. The enemy is no longer out there, ladies and gentlemen. The enemy is within ourselves. to be able to find the discipline, to be able to find our goals, set them, and actually follow them until you have reached your goal. Now, it's not going to be easy, ladies and gentlemen. No, there are going to be speed humps. There are going to be hurdles along the way. And this is why it is important to surround yourself with people that love you, that want to see you succeed, and ultimately that can guide you on your journey to achieving whatever goals that you have set for yourself. A luta continua. The struggle continues. Umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. Humanity. I am a person because of others, right? Our cultures are constantly changing and bumping into each other and making sure that they evolve. And so any people that are afraid of change, I'm sorry, but it's going to be hard for you. The only constant thing in this world is change, ladies and gentlemen. So we need to be flexible. We need to be nimble. We need to think on our feet. But ultimately, we need to look after one another and make sure that we grow as one. I thank you.
I think I speak for everyone when I say that this presentation was both inspiring and empowering. So Mr. Mandela, we thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Fola Aibu and I am a grade 11 student at Hillfield and I'm currently the co-vice president of HSC's Black Student Association.
Hello everyone, I'm Matt Polis, a grade 11 student from Hillfield Strathallan College. I'm the executive leader of Hillfield Strathallan College's Empowerment Square chapter.
And together, we are going to be presenting some of the questions that people have asked. This is also a reminder that if you have any questions for Mr. Mandela based on what you've heard in the presentation, please feel free to click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and submit your question. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. Our first question is, Nelson Mandela experienced a great deal of social injustice on which he spoke out about. What do you see as the greatest social injustice in current time that society should fight against?
Well, I believe when you look at different societies, you'll find different things. So in America, it definitely has to be the criminal justice system, a system that has legalized the shooting of Black people. That is the greatest, injustice, because now, you are not acknowledging the humanity of others. And so for me, what happened last year in America, it had to happen, You have to send a message to the people that this is not acceptable and it can never be acceptable. And that's why about 18 other countries marched in solidarity with the American people. So for me, it is important that we fight to try and resolve the criminal justice system and make sure new laws are passed to protect our people.
That was a great response. Thank you so much. The next question that we have is, in what ways has your grandfather inspired you to be the man you are today and continue to live as an activist?
Well, my grandfather taught me as a young man that I am a leader. And he said, I remember having dinner in Ndaba, you are my grandson. Therefore, people will look at you as a leader. Therefore, you need to get the best marks in class. And I was like, whoa, 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 granddad, pressure, oh my goodness, damn, right? But you must remember, ladies and gentlemen, that pressure is what is needed in order to make diamonds. So when your parents are pushing you and they're constantly nagging you and they're constantly on your case, understand that they're doing it to try and push you to do more, to be better, okay? Don't always be irritated, right? And another thing is that, you can imagine in our house, we had all kinds of visitors, from Lennox Lewis to, Prince Harry to Bill Clinton, President Bill Clinton, etc. And my grandfather treated those guests, those VIPs, the same way as he treated Mama Oli, who cooked in the kitchen, as Albert, who cleaned the garden, and Mike, who was the gentleman who cleaned the garden, the driver. Because Nelson Mandela understands, regardless of your age, your sex, or your background, we all have the potential to achieve greatness. So the compassion that he had for people is what really made him who he is, his humility, but understanding that we all have a path that we can march and find that greatness within us. And he made me understand that we each have a Nelson Mandela that lives within us. So we need to find him and unleash him on the world.
Thank you. So another question we have is, what do you think is the first step to reconcile with historical oppression and come together without prejudice?
The first thing we need to do, ladies and gentlemen, is to acknowledge the atrocities of the past. That's the first thing that needs to be done, right? Were Black people being lynched in the south of Mississippi, Alabama? Yes. Was there, a mass killing of Native American Indians? Yes, right? We need to be able to come, and when we're having an argument, and I say, hey, this is my mobile phone, and you say, no, that's not your mobile phone, that's your comb, right? We're not going to be able to actually continue the conversation until we're able to understand facts and agree on the facts. So the number one thing is that we need to agree on the facts. Once we've agreed on the facts, that will pave the way in order for us to be able to forge a way forward where it is protecting both of us, but also giving us the benefits to be able to decide who we want to be, right? So for me, the most important thing is that we need to come together on the table and recognize the facts and give assurance to the perpetrators, those who have committed crimes, those who have infringed the rights of others, that this is a process that will need to take place. We're not here to vilify you, but to make sure that we reach a ground of common understanding as we forge the way forward.
Thank you. The next question that we have is, in your opinion, what should Canada's next step be in order to end the tolerance of intolerance? What should allies be doing?
Well, we need to be strong. We need to be vigilant. We need to keep an eye out for people that have alternative opinions, which are backward, as far as I'm concerned, about different people of different races. It is our responsibility that if you hear someone saying a racial slur, if you hear someone being prejudiced, you need to stop, you need to go to that person and you need to correct them. Sometimes people don't even know that they're being prejudiced or being, or otherwise, So it is our responsibility, ladies and gentlemen, that wherever the ugly face of bigotry and prejudice show their face, that we stamp it out as quick as possible. And we send a message home that that is not allowed. And therefore, same I say, if the person continues with that, slant, no problem, you've said your piece, now you can move along. At least they can understand and acknowledge that what they're thinking or saying is not acceptable to a human family.
So we have another question here, which is, how did Nelson Mandela get to forgive 20 plus years of incarceration?
Well, that is a difficult question. I don't know. I mean, I can only think, right? So perhaps, while Nelson Mandela was in prison, he was seeing African countries being liberated from as early as 1950 with the liberation of Ghana, all the way up to 1980 with the liberation of Zimbabwe. And many of them, Uganda, had kicked out their former colonial masters, but it always ended up in a very bad way. And so I think Nelson Mandela, seeing what was happening, decided that he needs to try and avoid, civil war, and really try to create a country where Black and white people can actually work together, because the Black people were so oppressed for so long. They did need the assistance of the whites in terms of setting up the new systems of education, of healthcare systems, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's one thing that he saw coming out, and realized that we could actually achieve more if we work together, as opposed to us, fighting them and continuing the cycle of violence. The cycle of violence has really caused really adverse effects in our society in South Africa today. And these are things that are still lasting 28 years later after our independence. So I think these are some of the things that led him to say, we need to try a different way, a way in which we can work together and build a country together.
The next question that we have is, what is the biggest challenge that you have faced in your life so far, and how did you overcome it?
Well, I mean, one of the biggest challenges is that, people, when they see me as Mandela as privileged. And so they doubt, or, they're not sure whether I'm genuine as far as, with my initiatives, the African Rising Foundation, the Mandela Institute for Humanity. And so for me, what I've done is to just really allow the work to speak for itself. Yes, of course, I'm Mandela. Yes, I have privileges, but who is Ndaba? Who am I and what are my goals? So for me, I think it's really just being able to speak, let the work speak for itself.
We have another question here from a grade 4 class in Toronto, and they ask, to you, what is peace?
What is peace? Well, peace and harmony is where you have a world in which people recognize each other and don't infringe upon each other's rights. There is stability. Nobody is above the law. There is rule of law that's in place. And people have the opportunity to pursue their dreams. That is what peace looks like. And war has been completely outlawed or banned. And every nation in the world is no longer funding military. Because why are we funding military, right? We should not be funding military. So a world where governments don't need military.
The next question that we have is, what can young students or teenagers do to address some of the issues or problems in society?
Well, one of the things you can do is to come together with like-minded individuals by sharing your stories and sharing what it is that you're trying to achieve. You must remember that when we go together, we go much further, as opposed to when you go alone is where you go fast, right? We don't want to go fast, we want to go far, right? And so it's important that we work together. It is important that you have a mentor, right? I talked about having a mentor. Mentorship is very important for young people who are trying to make a difference and are young activists, in their own right. So a mentor is someone who's there, who's going to guide you and make sure that whenever you fall, they can be there. But ultimately, it's somebody who loves you and wants to see you succeed. So mentorship, ladies and gentlemen, is very, very important. And then don't forget, whoever it is that you're trying to assist or whatever challenge, engage with those people, talk to those people, understand those people, and come up with solutions with that community that you're trying to assist.
So we have another question here. It is, I'm only in grade 5, but I want to make a difference. How can I use social media to help educate my friends about Black history and lessons learned? Do you recommend any resources to get started?
The problem with internet these days and social media is that it has polarized our people. And so there is no fact checking, right? So I think what's important, there's, for example, a website called the Black Pages, right? That you can go to and see exactly what it is, or you can go to another page called the New African, right? and read and understand what is happening on the continent of Africa. But ultimately, it's important for us to be communicating, actual true facts and not be bombarded by the fake news that we see all the time. And it makes it difficult to only use social media because you can never really know what is truly what, So for me, it's important that you use your community, right? Use your community where you live, where you go to school, where you work, and your parents are there to make sure that you connect with other young people in your classes. Yeah.
The next question that we have is, how do you suggest moving towards more values based on leadership when politicians are so concerned with re-electability?
Yeah, it's unfortunate these days that you don't have, a good crop of leaders. It's more about their personal interests. And so for me, that is why my hope is in the young people. The young people, for me, are ultimately the ones who are going to make this world a better place. Most of the current leaders right now, I'll be honest with you, 90% of them are not value-based leaders, right? They are there to clean the bank, to look good, to say I'm the most powerful, etc., ego-driven, but not really there to look after their people. A true leader is not going to tell you about how he's the best or how he's number one. A true leader's position and role and responsibility is there to serve those who cannot serve themselves, to talk for those who can't talk for themselves, and act for those who can't act for themselves. And that is true leadership. And I see the next generation, people like you, who are going to take this to the next phase.
So we have another question here. Do you think that racial injustice today is due to the times when school teachers and news media had racial bias towards other cultures?
Sorry, please repeat that.
Do you think that racial injustice today is due to the times when school teachers and news media had racial bias towards other cultures?
I mean, yes, that is can be a factor, that contributes to that. But I think, it's important that these people do not go unchecked. There needs to be accountability. There needs to be transparency and a clear way. If there is prejudice that has been picked up, that needs to be dealt with, right? Or does that channel truly reflect those values? Are they, you know what I mean? So it's a bit of a difficult one because there's a few different factors that are involved in that one.
The next question is from a group of students from Orchard Park in an equity and social justice class. And their question is, do you think that these types of courses related to equity and social justice should be mandatory to help us move forward as a local and global community?
I believe they should be made mandatory. We do not want what happened last year to happen again. I've been reading stories about, one of the editors of the New York Times being fired or because of his racial slurs, etc., etc. So we need to sensitize our people around these important matters. So definitely should be made mandatory.
So we have another question here. What do you think your grandfather would have done if he saw the world today?
I think he would be both inspired by the marches that took place around the world last year in protest against the killings of innocent Black people, but he would be disappointed by the current crop of leaders. So I believe he would want to communicate to the young people and inspire them to keep pushing and keep going further. And don't forget to never leave your brother behind. Never leave your brothers behind. So it's important that we always check behind us, because remember, in a group, we are as strong as our weakest link. So it is our responsibility of those who are stronger and quicker to help those to make sure that we all move in unison.
We have a question from a grade 10 student at Trafalgar Castle School. So they said, we found out your biggest challenge, but what is your biggest accomplishment and how did it make you feel?
Biggest accomplishment. Let me see. Well, I would have to say releasing the book. That was a big accomplishment. I never thought I'd write a book, to be honest with you. And I did it. And it took me about 2 years to complete that process. And when it came out, to see the people's reactions, some people send me messages on Instagram, and saying, thank you, I just got a copy, or I just finished reading it. Wow, what a great book, what a beautiful story. So for me, that has really made me proud. And I'm happy, to see the feedback and the great positive feedback that people have gotten from it.
This is a really interesting question. Do you believe other marginalized groups should unite, or should they focus on their own issues due to many marginalized groups being racist towards each other?
Well, I believe that it is better to unite and come together and recognize your common interest or the common challenges that you face, right? If you're Black and I'm Chinese and we're equally discriminated against by the government, then why should we not work together to try and get them to recognize that and get them to pass laws that will make sure that our rights are also protected? We should definitely work together. There's no question about it. But of course, it's up to us to decide. If the French and the English don't want to come together, that's not my problem. My problem is in Africa, So I want to unite with all the African people across the world and build a strong platform where we can engage and build together. But that does not mean we don't want people of African origin. No, it means we want people who are genuine about making sure that Africa develops in a positive way.
We have a great question from a student named Samir, and they're asking, how do we help people close to us help overcome their internalized racism and prejudice?
Difficult one. I think it's important for people to be exposed to different cultures. I think, okay, now it's COVID now, so traveling is kind of restricted, but traveling is a great way to actually experience different cultures and how people do things in different worlds. And you might even appreciate some of the things, trying out different food, maybe, checking out the different ways in which people dress and why they do the things they do, right? But if you never are inquisitive about the other world, then it's disappointing to say the least. So I think it's time, if you guys haven't done it at your college, to have a African party and all the different African students can showcase Ghana. What is the food? What is the music? What is the fashion? And we'll go to Nigeria, and we'll go to Somalia, Kenya, Ethiopia, all over the place. And then we do a European party. And then each country that you have can showcase their culture so that we can really come together, because I feel that once you're experiencing other people's cultures by living it and experiencing it, there's no need for us to because we realize that we all have a common ground.
I think that idea is actually really, really cool. We have another question that's targeted towards schools. What should students be doing to eliminate discrimination? School is where things like this can start the most, and students might not be able to speak up because maybe the teachers don't support their stand.
Well, if the teachers don't support their stand, though, that's a big problem. That needs to be reported to the parents, and the parents need to act. So it's either you are going to have an open discussion and have a parents-teacher meeting, or they're going to include the students, or you're going to have to report that school to the government, to the mayor's office, and explain what is going on and try to, stop that out. But I would be very disappointed if teachers would not support students because we teachers are there to make sure that when students finish, yes, baby. When teachers' job is to make sure that the young people are equipped to face the world out there. So it would be disappointing to see that teachers are not supporting students in anything that they're trying to achieve.
Thank you so much. The next question that we have is, 1 second, sorry. You mentioned in your book that everyone should add some South African music to their Spotify. So who should we start listening to?
Well, you have DJ Maporisa, you have DJ Kabza the Small, you have AKA, you have Mampincha, you have Babes Wotumo, right? And from there, you have Kid, you have Nasty C, and from there you'll be able to discover a whole lot more.
We have a really deep question here. What advice do you have for Black boys who are targeted with higher rates of racism?
Well, that is a difficult question. But again, you know, we need to stick together. We need to come together. We need to know each other in our communities, in our neighborhoods, right? It's important that, you know, we are not ever found alone, you know, because then we are easy targets for the system. I think it's important at some stage for young people to get together and have an open, honest conversation with the police people in their communities, so that they know each other and be able to treat each other as human beings. You know, why should Black boys run when they see the cops, when they're doing absolutely nothing wrong, right? But because of that generational fear and resistance, this is what you find today. So for me, we need to humanize cops, and the cops need to know who lives in their community. Ray is not just some guy who plays dice, you know, on the corner and drinks 40s all day. Ray, you know, could be a father, could be a brother, you know, could be a student, you know, at a university. So we need to humanize each other and stop looking at just black and white.
We have another question, and it is, how did you get your motivation to become an activist? And why did you choose to continue your grandfather's legacy?
Well, I grew up with my grandfather, and so he imparted some of the values that he held, and they became my own. And so I was not happy with the current state of our country. And so, you know, I believe that I needed to do my part as well. And so, you know, I became an ambassador for HIV, United Nations AIDS, where I traveled to Russia, Brazil, a few other countries talking about this awareness. And that's how really my activism started. But now it's not just about HIV/AIDS. It's about activating young leaders and making them understand that they are the masters of their own destiny. You know, don't take a course in science because you're trying to impress some girl or trying to impress some guy, or you're trying to, you know, please your parents. No, you need to choose a path that you want for yourself. And also, do not live a life that you know is not the life that you deserve. If you deserve A class, then you should go and work for A class. Don't accept B class, right? And so for me, you know, the legacy is truly about making people understand their humanity and also making sure that people can be inspired to achieve whatever goals that they have. This world will only be better with people like you, not with the old guard. Their time is up. It's time for young people now to take over every sphere of life.
So another question we have here is, how do you cope with living in a society that runs on systematic racism?
It's a very difficult one, and and you can't cope. I mean, look at apartheid. That system was dismantled, and now in America, that's why we have to fight. That's why we have to unite. That's why we have to come together, and that's why you have to push consistently until those reforms are passed in the government, in the policy, in the laws. That's the only way.
We have another question, and it is, how can we become more aware of our own internal and possibly unconscious racism or prejudice?
Well, the only way is if you go and discuss whatever thoughts you're feeling with somebody in a different culture, and be respectful and say, listen, I'm just learning. I don't know how this is going to come out, but what do you think about this? So that the person does not be aggressive onto you, and be honest about the situation, that you just want to make sure that what you're feeling or seeing is normal or not, and be able to work through that, and maybe include a teacher in that conversation to help you guide that conversation.
Another question here is, what do you think is the danger with the notion of not seeing color?
Well, that is a silly thing for me as far as I'm concerned, because you do see color, right? If you don't see color, that means you are actually not acknowledging the traumatic past of African Americans or Africans. So you're not acknowledging the pain that slavery brought on our people. You can't say you don't recognize color, right? Because if you don't recognize my color, then you don't recognize my history. And so you want to treat everybody the same. Yes, we're all the same. We're all humans, but we're not all traumatized, right? We don't all have the same emotions. So we need to recognize each and every single one of us.
The next question we have is, terms like equity and inclusion are now used often in institutions' core values. However, the authentic work that needs to be done to truly see this in sectors such as employment and education is not present sometimes. So how can we go beyond these terms and bring actions?
Again, we need to come together and decide what it is that we want to do and how we're going to face these challenges. That is the only way, ladies and gentlemen. We need to be the ones to decide that. Nobody else can come and put it for us, right? So that is the challenge that we all have, is how do we build bridges and common platforms where we can share openly and honestly about the things that are happening and we're experiencing.
So another question we have is, what is the greatest life lesson your grandfather has told you?
One of the greatest life lessons, I would say, is if a person can be taught to love, then a person can be taught to hate. But you must remember that love comes much more natural to the human condition than hate. So for us, we need to teach our people about the power of love, the power of unity, the power of coming together, because love is right at the center, is right at the bottom of it all. It is the glue that opens up a world of inclusivity, multiculturalism, but that does not inhibit anybody or exclude anybody, but creates an environment in which we can all thrive.
We have a grade 5 student that asks, what is the main problem in the world that you want to solve?
Well, I want to make sure that I am remembered for the person that worked towards African unity and uniting people of African origin across the world.
Here, another question here is, Do you think defunding the police is a valid solution to the issue of police violence?
I know, I don't think it's about funding or less funding. I think it's about accountability and transparency. When a cop has gone and shot an innocent person, what are the repercussions and consequences? Do they lose their job? Do they spend time in jail? That is what is more critical, ladies and gentlemen, that there is accountability and transparency within the system. Funding or less funding is not going to help us.
We have another question that asks, do you have goals to enter a life of public service like your grandfather?
I believe we all need to do our part. So in the near future, hopefully that will happen. But for now, I'm focusing on personal growth. You know, I'm 38 years old, and things are looking positive. And so I believe in the next couple of years, could be 5, could be 10, we'll be making those strides.
We have a question here, and it's, I'm a part of the Old Guard, a grandmother working with the Stephen Lewis Foundation to turn the tide of HIV and AIDS in Africa. Do you think we should also be working with young people to counteract issues of racism in our own country?
I mean, what kind of an organization doesn't work with young people, right? Because here we are trying to create a better world, right? In order for us to create a better world, we need to know what is it that young people care about, what are their interests, because we're leaving this world, we're working to this world with young people, for young people. So they need to be involved in the idea generation, in the decision-making process. We need to have young people at every level, every organization, even the government. They don't have enough young people.
We have a question that asks, Dear Mr. Mandela, leaders must have a lot of meetings. How could a leader use meetings strategically, and when would a leader know when to call one?
Well, you call a meeting because you want to clear something up, you want to discuss an idea, or you want to formalize partnerships or request for a partnership, right? So meetings are important for us to test our own thoughts and ideas, but to create partnerships and also to design plans moving forward.
So a question here is, what would you say to the African community in the West that are navigating between adjusting to a new culture while also holding on and representing their heritage?
Firstly, you need to be proud and bold of who you are. Never deny your culture, never deny where you come from, because if you don't know where you're coming from, my friend, you shall never know where you're going. That's number one. Number two, find all the Africans that in your community, in your neighborhood. Find them, go and hug them and say, I appreciate you, my brother. We are together. And from there, you find out, how's your experience? How's everything going? Where can I help? Where can I be of assistance? Let us create an African community, online group for us here in this community. Let us meet every Friday as Africans and do what Africans do, right? So we need to create those platforms. We need to be meeting. We need to be together. And we just need to be proud of who we are.
We have a question from a student from Hillfield, Strathallan College asking, how can I use compassion to create change?
By showing others your compassion, people will respect that you are a genuine leader. That is what is important, a genuine leader. So continue respecting and loving people regardless of their background or what they look like, you know, rich or poor. That will exude within who you are and people recognize it sooner or later.
So this is a question that's been on my mind, so I'm glad that someone asked it in the chat, but it is it possible in the future to have a world that will be entirely free of racism?
It is possible, 100%, but it's up to us. We are the ones who are going to make it happen. It's not going to happen automatically. You see, we need to do our part to making sure that it happens. But I believe if we have the will, there's nothing that can stop us from creating it.
We have a question from a teacher asking, do you think any current heads of states are true leaders? If so, who are they and why are they true leaders?
Well, I don't know if they're cheerleaders. Trump was a cheerleader for Trump. That's what I know, right? He was a cheerleader for himself. Who are the other cheerleaders and what are they cheerleading for? I don't know who they are. I don't know. I don't see any myself personally. Maybe Paul Kagame from Rwanda, right? Cheerleading for his country. Angela Merkel of Germany, but she just left, right? Russia, Putin, for the Russian people. It's very hard. There's very few good leaders that I respect in today's world.
So thank you so much for answering all these questions. I can personally say that I've learned a lot from your answers. Unfortunately, the Q&A session is ending now, but I encourage all of you that ask questions to continue asking questions and seeking answers. Now my partners, Matt Bullis, Ife Adiribigbe, and Mr. Leo Johnson would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Mandela, for sharing your story and reminding us what your grandfather showed the world, that peace conquers hate. It was very moving and eye-opening. I think that we can all learn from the philosophy of Ubuntu, that I am because you are, that humanity and its oneness is a pivotal move towards change. Over the past summer, I was reflecting on my goals for the upcoming school year, and I wanted to contribute more to my community, especially during these unprecedented times. At that time, I did not know what it would take. Luckily, September came around where an Empowerment Squared chapter started at Hillfield Strathallan College, and it was a perfect opportunity. Empowerment Squared is a community made up of encouraging staff, volunteers, and a committed team that supports youth in a way like never before. I invite Mr. Leo Johnson, the founder and executive director of Empowerment Squared, to share more information about the HOPE program.
Thank you very much, Matt, and thank you so much to Ndaba for joining us all the way there from South Africa. It's been a great morning, all of you can attest, and I like to leave you with very few messages as you think about some of the things that Ndaba has said and his reflections as well, that Black history is not an event, it is a journey. So I want to remind all of you that after today, the journey begins, and Empowerment Square is always here to support you, whether you're a student or a teacher. We are always willing to work with you as we all get along this journey together. To find out more about our organization and what we do, please do a quick stop by at our website and you'll be able to learn more on how you can get in touch with us. I also want to remind all of us that we don't come to talk about these things and have these conversations because we want to all say we are all just on the same side. No, we've come because we are seeking to understand. And the joining of seeking to understand means listening to multiple voices and listening to multiple experiences and reflections. And whether we disagree or not, before we do, let's ensure that we've done our part to try and understand. I want to thank everybody for supporting. Also, those of you who supported the HOPE program in Liberia, thank you so much. Whether it's through moral support, financial support, we want to thank you for everything. And to Hillfield, few names I would like to mention: Mr. John Bolger, Oying Adiregbegbe, Nora Chilivian, Moa Ayibowu, Fehin, Awobodu Fola Ayibowu, Matt Bollis, Ife Adiregbegbe, and Pio Botumelo. Thank you, everybody. It's been a great time, and we continue to see this work grow. We look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
On behalf of Hillfield Strathallan College, we'd like to take this opportunity to thank once again Mr. Mandela for his support and empowering message. We are also honored to have Mr. Jacques Baril, the Ambassador of the Republic of Haiti and the Republic of South Africa, joining us today. We'd also like to thank the staff at Empowerment Squared, including Ms. Lisa Marie Smith, Ms. Yana Faizai, and Mr. Leo Johnson for this amazing partnership with HSC and their dedication. We are very excited for what's to come. This event would not have been possible without the support of Hillfield Strathallan College, including the communications team. Thank you, Ms. Caitlin Gaylor, Ms. Alex Berry, and Ms. Zara Falani for your efforts. Thank you to HSC's IT team as well for their technical support this week and today. Mr. John Bulger, Mrs. Anthea Cadet Blas, Mr. Nate Styoff, and Mr. Mark Edgar. We could not have been here today without your support and efforts. They are senior school staff at Hillfield Strathallan College. They have supported founding the Empowerment Squared chapter at HSC and have oversaw all the work that has been done with regard to Black History Month. Thank you for your motivation and endeavors. Supporting Empowerment Squared's Hope Development Program in Liberia will empower economically and socially disadvantaged Liberians with the technological resources to jumpstart their educational and commerce pathway. Words fall short when we try to express our sincerest gratitude to our sponsors. Thank you to our current sponsors, including Topmarks, Justin and Andy Baker, the owners of F45 Hamilton Downtown, and the Bolas family. We really appreciate their support for this cause. If you feel compelled to donate, a link will be displayed at the end of the webinar. I'd like to now invite my co-executive of the Empowerment Squared chapter at HSC, Ife Aderbigbe, to end things off for us today with a call to action.
I want to again thank Mr. Mandela for coming here to speak to us. All through this month, we have been learning about celebrating Black history, Black excellence, Black culture, Black pain, Black joy, and anti-racism. But too often, we do nothing with what we've learned. We remain passive in our daily lives and let the racist comments slip from our colleagues' mouth or ignore the disparity between how our racialized friends are treated versus their white counterparts. We have a tendency to remain passive, even with the knowledge that we have about anti-racism. And my question is, what will you do? What will you do with the knowledge you have about anti-racism? Will you continue to be a bystander when racism occurs, or will you step in? It will probably be difficult to say something, to do something, or to step in, but it is worth it because it's the right thing to do. It is the right thing to fight injustice in all its forms. And I hope that you will all be anti-racist, but in the end, it's all up to you. What will you do?